Hey guys, Happy New Year. In this video, I'd like to summarize what happened in 2025 and what I anticipate happening in 2026. So I declared 2025 the year of the porthole sets being early black and white sets that had a full round screen bezel. Broadcast image was always a rectangle 4:3 aspect ratio, but Zenith and a few others, believe motivated by marketing to say they had the largest viewable area, decided to go with a full round screen, which means you either had to shrink the image and have some blank areas around the edges, or expand it and lose the corners. Well, we started working on some porthole sets and got them partially working, then things went a little sideways, for good reasons. One, I got a Sylvania Halo Light set, a model I'd been looking for a long time. I dove into getting that working. Got a CTC5 early color roundy, which I was not expecting to come across. But on that same expedition, I got two more porthole sets, so it just added to that fun. Then got a decent deal on a vintage Hewlett-Packard Spectrum analyzer and went down that rabbit hole of acquiring some of the missing bits, the cables, the oscillator oven and all that, but got it working, which is a good thing because, well, the biggest thing of the year was getting the RCA 1936 RR359 field test set, which has a host of problems. One of which, in particular, the tuner, I think we're going to make use of that spectrum analyzer to try fabricating a replica of what the original was like. Now, I still need to finish those porthole sets, in particular some that belong to customers. I've got one back up on the workbench right now. So going into 2026, I will continue working on them, and there will be porthole content. I'm also excited by thanks to our local antique radio club that found a parts chassis, I was able to scavenge the remote control Lazy Bones motorized unit from it. And I transplanted that onto a set that I had started working on, and I want to see if I can get that working. I've also been working on some other sets on the side, Predictas, some 7-inch electrostatic sets that I haven't included in video and probably won't. See, I did that Beginner's Guide to Electrostatics series not too long ago and longer ago, a series on a magnetically deflected 1940s black and white TVs. My motivation on making those video series was, one, to share the knowledge, and two, because I intend to cut back on that kind of content. I don't anticipate doing any more predictive videos anytime soon unless something really interesting comes along, because it's just the same thing over and over. Same with the 7-inch sets, the Motorola sets, the Admirals. It's just the same chassis over and over and over again. So I want to move on from that. Which brings us to what do I think is going to happen in 2026. So obviously, like I said, the big thing was getting the RR359, which needs a lot of work. That is not going to be a quick project. Somebody asked me when I anticipated it working or being done. For sure, at least a year or more before it electrically will work. And there's still some big unknowns. I haven't even tested the picture tube yet. And that would be a shame, but not impossible to work around. Worst case scenario, I'd modify it to use a more modern, like a 12 LP4, which would require a lot of modifications, but there are possibilities there. No, a bigger concern to me is if some of the more unusual parts, vertical output transformer, horizontal output transformer, the IF transformers, if any of those are open, that's going to be tricky to repair. As you've seen, I started out with the power supply for that. It's straightforward. I'm going to continue on with that, but we're missing some stuff, in particular the tuner. What I would like to do is visit the early television museum that has a 359 with the original tuner and take copious notes, photos, measurements of it, with the goal to replicate it. Now, thanks to Daryl Hawk, has been mentoring me on the 359. I've got some photos, I got schematics, and I have a pretty good idea of how it works and the pieces that need to come together to complete it. But things like what gauge wire did they use winding a coil? What's the diameter of the form coil? How many turns of wire are there in particular areas? That kind of stuff. And that's where I see the spectrum analyzer coming in handy, because I need to build a local oscillator. And it'd be great to see how clean a sine wave is it putting out, what frequency is it putting out, that kind of thing, which is what spectrum analyzer is great for. So that project is going to be ongoing. And once I get it done electrically, the cabinet needs to be completely overhauled. And I might outsource that. It isn't going to be cheap, and I may have to have it shipped or make a long road trip. So don't expect that to be done anytime soon. There's also the RCA projection set. There's also the Dumont Clifton. So let me just get to it. What I plan on doing from now on is getting into the big projects that I've been putting off. The Dumont Clifton, the Philco 48-1000. I've already started on the CTC5 log, almost wrapped it up actually. And cut way back on the common sets that you've seen me do over and over. I might still be working on them behind the scenes, but don't expect to see them very often on this channel. Now, there's also the color test jig I picked up last year. That was missing some of the cables and adapters. I picked up Molex connectors and wires and everything I should need to get this working with some of the chassis that I have. So I'm hoping to get that in 2026. So to summarize, 2026, I expect to be the year of big things, moving on to big projects, and less of the beginners, low-level kind of stuff. I've done plenty of videos on that. I want to move on to the big stuff people have been asking me about for years. I want to get back to the Westinghouse WR8. If you remember, I got that long ago. And the Dumont Clifton, and the Philco 48-1000, and someday the Philco 37690 high-end radio, and of course the 359 will be continued to be work on the sidelines for the next few years, I expect. I do plan, as I say, going to the museum sometime over the winter. I do plan on going to the convention, and then the fall swap meet. We shall see. We shall see. Don't have a nickname for it yet other than the year of big things, so see how it goes. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. Have a happy new year.